Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, OP was engaged to a woman he met at work. They kept their relationship secret due to office rules until she left for another job. Their relationship flourished and they got engaged. However, suspicions grew as she started working late. Eventually, he discovered her affair with a partner at her firm, leading to their breakup. Now let's get into the story. I 30 male fiancé 28 female, and I used to work in the same firm when we met. I'm a little bit older than she is, so I had already established myself in the office when she was a new hire. We connected right away, and it didn't take long for us to start dating. Because my office has a strict no-dating policy, we kept our relationship a secret until she was able to find another job somewhere else. We both saw a lot of potential in our relationship, so it was her choice to leave the firm to work somewhere else. Our relationship was great for the first couple of years. We were happy together, and both of us would talk about the grand plans we had for our future. She moved into my house, and shortly after I proposed. We put our plans for the wedding on the back burner because we were both so focused on our careers. Neither of us was super invested in having a huge wedding anyway. I've been married before in the past. My ex-wife was my first love and things didn't end well with us, so taking the step to propose to my fiancé was a big deal for me. She and I had talked about marriage for a good majority of our relationship, and she assured me that she valued it and took it seriously. That was important to me, otherwise I wouldn't have proposed. She was new at the firm she was practicing law at, and the partners who worked above her took advantage of her eagerness to get ahead. They always had her stay late to cover a lot of the grunt work that the more experienced lawyers in the firm didn't want to do. I knew that my fiancé was brilliant, so it upset me. However, she knew that it was something she was going to have to get past when she was hired there, so she took it on the chin and worked through it. After about a year of working at the firm, she got a promotion and all of that stopped. She was being treated with the utmost respect, and she was bringing a lot of loyal clientele to the firm. The partners there realized that they were lucky to have her. So when she started staying extra late at the office, using the excuse of having an excess of papers to file or other small menial tasks, I started getting a little suspicious. Up until that point, she hadn't done anything to make me question our relationship. Because of what happened with my ex-wife, I was a little on edge with my fiancé. I had some trust issues that I needed to work through. A couple of times a week, she would stay later at the office to do work that an assistant or an intern should have been doing. One night, I asked her about it, and she got somewhat confrontational with me in response. She didn't think I had the right to question what she was doing at her job. We got into a bit of an argument over it, because she was framing it as me being possessive of her time or controlling when that wasn't the case. I'll admit, I might have been in the wrong for questioning her for it to begin with, but she wasn't very understanding of where I was coming from. In the end, she was cheating on me when she was staying late at the office. She was just trying to deflect some of the guilt onto me by making me the bad guy. Anyway, we got over the fight, and things went back to normal for a couple of weeks. We talked through it, and I explained the things that I went through with my ex-wife, and she told me that she would try and make me feel a little more comfortable. She had her assistant pick up some of the slack at the office, and she didn't have to stay late for a couple of weeks. Our offices were on the same block, not even a 2-minute walk away from each other. We would often get together and have lunch at a cafe near us. One morning, she was complaining to me about how she wasn't going to be able to make lunch because she was going to be working through it to attend a Zoom meeting with some overseas clients. I felt bad for her, so I thought it would be a nice gesture to grab her something quick to eat and run it over to her while I was on my lunch break. I got there, and the receptionist told me that she went out to lunch. It was weird, but I tried not to let my mind get carried away because it was entirely possible that a meeting was canceled, or she was just grabbing a bagel from a street vendor. I left the office, and later that night, when we were both home, I mentioned how I stopped by to bring her food and she wasn't there. She confirmed what I initially thought and told me that she just needed a coffee break and went to a cafe down the street. Over the next few weeks, I noticed that she was on her phone a lot more while we were together. She was constantly messaging someone, and she was very protective of it in front of me. She would be sure to tilt the phone away from me when she opened a message or took a call. A lot of red flags were raised for me again when she started acting like that. I was afraid that if I mentioned anything about it, I was going to push her away from me, and I didn't want that. I thought that she was somebody that I could see myself with, and I wanted to trust her. She called me one evening about an hour before. She was supposed to leave the office and told me that one of the other lawyers at her firm had a family emergency, and they were all staying late to help them out. I asked for more details, but she was very vague about everything. I noticed that she hesitated when I asked about what lawyer had the emergency as well. My gut told me that she was lying. I told her that I was fine with her staying and just to call me when she was on her way home, so I knew when to expect her. Instead of going home that night, I parked my car outside of her office building and kept my eyes on the door. Around 5:00, I noticed several of her coworkers leaving the office on time. The real nail in the coffin was seeing the man she told me had a family emergency walk out of the building. It seemed like everybody but my fiancé left the building to go home. I waited for about half an hour to see if anybody else struggled out of the building, and no one did. I worked up the nerve to go inside to see what was really going on. I was terrified to find out what the truth was, but I knew that I needed to. I got out of my car and went into the building to find her offices almost completely empty. My fiancé's things were still sitting by her desk, so it confirmed to me that she was in fact there. I happened to notice that her phone was sitting on the desk. I picked it up and did a quick search. Through it to see if there was any indication of what I was about to find. There was a brief conversation with a partner from her firm telling her that he needed her and told her to come up with an excuse to stay late. She responded with a thumbs up and 15 minutes later sent him an office number. I put the phone down and went right to that office. The blinds were drawn, but I could hear very obvious intimate noises from the other side of the door. I almost didn't want to open it. I knew what was happening. I didn't need to see it with my own eyes, but I wanted to get that confirmation. I also want to get the proof. I pulled out my phone and I opened the door while I had my camera set to record. My fiancé and one of the partners at the firm were both at a conference table having an intimate. They were lying down with their feet closest to the door, so they didn't even notice me right away. I was frozen there for a moment trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I could have made a huge scene right then and there, but I decided not to. I decided that I wanted to make them both regret what they did before they had a chance to try and explain it away. I quietly closed the door and rushed out of the office to go home. I spent the majority of the night in my home office to avoid my fiancé. I knew some of the other partners and employees at my fiancé's firm, so when she was out of earshot, I reached out to them and told them what happened. People were shocked, and they were honestly disturbed that they were so brazenly having an affair in the office. One of the other lawyers at the firm told me that he would contact HR on my behalf to file a report. I sent him the evidence that I had of their affair and left it in his hands. I didn't say anything to my fiancée about her staying late at the office at all. When she noticed I seemed much calmer about it this time around, she did it again 2 nights later. She called me and told me that she would be staying late to help the same coworker who had the family emergency catch up on work. When she told me that, I reached out to her coworker who said they'd contact HR and told him that she would likely be engaging in those activities at every night. He told me he would take care of it. I parked outside of her office again that night. I noticed that a majority of the staff left the building on time, aside from my fiancé and the man she was cheating on me with. The coworker that I spoke with lingered outside with another woman for about 10 minutes before they both went back inside the building. I didn't know if they were planning on catching them in the act or what, but I imagined that they probably would. About 15 minutes later, my fiancé practically ran out of the building in visible distress. The other 3 people were not far behind her. My fiancé saw me sitting in the car across the street from her building and ran right over to it. She tried to open the door, but it was locked. I rolled down the window and I asked her what was wrong. I think she knew right away that I had some involvement in whatever just happened in the building. She told me that she had just been fired and wanted to go home to deal with it. I told her that she was no longer welcome in my home and that she would need to find a hotel room for the night. I rolled up the window before I drove off, leaving her crying on the sidewalk. The engagement was broken off. Thankfully, we had barely started planning the wedding, so there wasn't much to take care of as far as that goes. The partner that she was sleeping with ended up getting fired from the firm as well. I've had about enough I can take of being betrayed by my partners. I hate to be this way, but it's going to take a long time for me to be willing to open up with another woman. Maybe someday I'll meet someone who I can put my trust in. Today's second story. In this story, Opie met his ex-girlfriend after his 10-year marriage ended amicably. They bonded over shared experiences of betrayal. After 3 years together, he discovered she was cheating with her ex-husband. He confronted her with evidence, ended the relationship, and made her leave. Now let's get into the story. I, 39, met my ex-girlfriend, 35, female. I was married for almost 10 years. My ex-wife and I started off great, but toward the end of our relationship, we just couldn't get along. We didn't have any children or anything tying us together, so we mutually agreed that it would be best to call it. One of the things that drew me to my ex-girlfriend when we met was how we had similar experiences with our partners. She was cheated on by her ex-husband and baby daddy, so she left him. We bonded over our shared experiences, and given both of our pasts, I figured we would put a lot of effort into having a great relationship. I met her daughter, and we were an unofficial family for the 3 years that we were together. I wanted to marry her and formally adopt her daughter, so she would have my last name. Because of the custody arrangement she had with her ex, he was very much in the picture. She would argue with him all the time about pickup and drop-off times. She would complain to me about how he was buying her a ton of fast food and spoiling her when they were together. We both thought it was some ploy to get her daughter to spend more time with him. I was used to her texting him all the time. They would have phone calls and video chats from time to time as well. As far as I was aware, everything they discussed was about childcare. She would never go to other places to make the phone calls. She would tell me about everything that happened with him anyway, so there wasn't much of a point to it. I thought we had a pretty open relationship in that respect. One day I noticed that she was stepping outside a lot to make the calls. My suspicions weren't raised immediately, but I did think it was weird. I would ask her about what he had to say when she came in, and she told me that he was giving her a hard time about dates and things like that. She was very vague with a lot of her answers. With their custody arrangements, they would alternate weekends that they would spend with their kid. So, every other weekend I would support her. Surprise my girlfriend with a fun date night or something like that. I knew that she wasn't happy with the custody arrangement, so anything I could do to help her was good in my eyes. One weekend I made plans to take her to a museum, then we would grab lunch and catch a movie after. I told her that we had plans, but I didn't tell her exactly what we were doing. I had already bought the tickets for everything because I just assumed everything would be fine. She wanted to drop her daughter off at her ex's house, and I waited around for her to show up back home. Time kept going, and she didn't show up. She knew that we had plans, and it was unlike her not to be on time for something. My mind went to the worst-case scenario, and I immediately started calling her to make sure she was okay. She didn't answer the phone, and I was a little panicked. All I could do was wait to hear something back from her. About an hour after I had reached out, I got a response from her saying that she was going to be spending the day with her daughter and ex. I was really confused about that because I knew she couldn't stand her ex plus. It was his custody weekend, and unless he invited her somewhere, she had no right to be lingering around. I didn't want to push it and ask a lot of questions, so I just told her that I was worried and I casually asked what they were up to. She didn't respond to me until the end of the day. She told me that they went to a water park together, since one just opened up near her ex. When she got home later that night, I asked her about her day to see how everything was. She told me that they all had a fun time, and she was glad that her daughter was able to spend time with both of her parents. She told me that it all felt normal again. Normal for her changed when he cheated on her and she divorced him. I was getting a sense that she missed what they had as a family. I could understand that, but I was a little bit nervous. I love my girlfriend, and I didn't want to lose her. She apologized for missing my plans and promised to make it up to me. When she said that, I thought she was being a little cheeky about making it up to me in the bedroom. When I made a move on her, she turned me down. Our intimate life wasn't the greatest on the planet before all of this. But after the weekend she spent with her ex, it was non-existent. For weeks, every time I would try to kiss her for more than a couple of seconds or do anything intimate with her, she would come up with an excuse to get away from me. At the same time, she was spending more time with her ex. It felt wrong to complain about it because she was framing it in a way that she was doing it for her daughter, but after a while I started to suspect that there was more to it. She came home late one night from dropping her daughter off at her ex's house, and I noticed a mark on her shoulder. She was clearly trying to cover it up with her shirt. It could have been something from a curling iron or a bug bite, but I was already suspicious and the placement was adding to that. Later that night, I looked through her phone when she was asleep. I needed to know if there was something going on with her and her ex. Of course, my suspicions were immediately confirmed by their text messages. They were sending things like, "I can't wait to see you this weekend. I miss you so much. I want you back," etc. I looked through their messages and saw that he apologized for cheating on her and subtly blamed her for the cheating. Instead of fighting back like she normally would have, she accepted what he had to say and took some of the blame. I thought it was kind of pathetic for her to do that. The weekend that he told her he was going to the water park, he invited her to his house for a discussion. According to the text messages after that, they slept together that night. From there, everything escalated and they started seeing each other again. I was heartbroken and angry that she would lie to me and cheat on me like that. The thing about it is, if she wanted to try to rekindle something with him to have her family back together for her daughter's sake, I would have understood. I wouldn't have been happy with it, but if she had come to me from the beginning, I would have accepted it. But instead, she lied to my face and made me look like a fool. I wanted to get back at her in some way. I had been good to her, and she completely betrayed my trust. I needed to show her that I wasn't someone who would be toyed around with like that. I played it cool and didn't say anything to her over the weekend. In fact, I tried to avoid her. After her daughter was back from her dad's house, I decided I was going to pay him a visit. I didn't know what I had planned when I got there. All I knew was that I was angry and I needed to take it out on something. When I pulled up to his house, I noticed that there was an unfamiliar car in the driveway. It didn't belong to him, and it wasn't my wife's. I didn't know who else he spent time with, but given his history, I couldn't help but wonder if it was another woman. I thought it would be really rich for my girlfriend to throw away everything we had to give this man a second chance only for him to continue cheating on her. I kind of hoped that would be the case, actually. I looked inside the car before I walked to the door, and I saw that there was a fuzzy pink steering wheel cover and made an assumption that it was a woman's car. I walked over to the windows and peeked inside to see him very cozy with another woman. They were in his living room watching a movie. She was sitting on his lap with her arms around his neck, and they were kissing. I took a couple of pictures and drove away. I knew exactly what I was going to do to get back at my girlfriend then. I got home and waited for her daughter to fall asleep, so she wouldn't have to hear anything I had to say. My girlfriend sat down next to me on the couch, and I calmly told her that I expected her to be out of my house by the end of the week, and I didn't want anything to do with her. She tried to play dumb like she didn't know what was going on, but I told her that I knew about everything. She made it out like I was the bad guy for going through her phone. At the end of our conversation, she told me that she never loved me anyway. She reminded me that her ex was a woman, the love of her life, and they were going to get back together because he changed. That's when I pulled out the photos I'd taken of him with the other woman. She was shocked to see them. I told her that it didn't look like he changed as much as she thought. She was clearly angry about the pictures, and she stormed out of the living room. I heard her yelling on the phone shortly after. She came to me a couple of days before she was supposed to be out and apologized, begging me to change my mind and let her stay. Apparently, she wasn't able to work things out with her ex. I told her that wasn't an option for me, and she only had a few more days to leave. She tried to tell me that she had nowhere else to go and that she couldn't afford to be out on her own, but I just told her that wasn't my problem. She didn't have a job. She survived on spousal support from her ex, and if they couldn't work things out, I doubted she was welcome at his house. By the end of the week, all of her things were packed, and she was on her way out. She was going to her grandmother's house a couple of states away. I can only imagine that a major custody battle took place after she left the state. That's typically not something a parent with a custody agreement is allowed to do without notice. Frankly, I don't really care. She's out of my life, and all I want to do is move on from this nightmare.